For years, people had whispered about strange things happening in the skies. Some said they saw glowing lights darting across the horizon, faster than any airplane or satellite. Others claimed to hear eerie hums that made their skin crawl. Governments tried to brush it off as weather balloons, secret military experiments, or even tricks of the mind. But deep down, everyone wondered if something, or someone, was watching them from beyond the stars. The stories were everywhere. In small towns, farmers woke up to find perfect circles carved into their fields overnight. Scientists couldn't explain how such intricate designs could appear without leaving footprints or disturbing the soil. In big cities, people gathered, on rooftops at night, pointing cameras toward the sky, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious lights. Social media buzzed with blurry photos and shaky videos, each one claiming to be proof of alien life. Yet, no matter how many reports surfaced, nothing concrete ever came out of it. Slowly but surely, the excitement faded. People went back to their daily lives, convincing themselves it was all just hype. But what if it wasn't? In a remote corner of Siberia, hidden under layers of snow and secrecy, lay evidence that the truth was far stranger than anyone imagined. Decades ago, during a particularly brutal winter, locals reported seeing a fiery object crash into the frozen wilderness. At first, authorities dismissed it as a meteorite. But when investigators arrived, they found something far more unsettling. Massive spacecraft, damaged but unmistakably not of this world. Its sleek metallic surface gleamed faintly despite being partially buried in ice. Strange symbols etched along its sides seemed to shimmer like liquid metal, shifting colors whenever someone looked too closely. News of the discovery never reached the public. Instead, the ship was quietly transported to a top-secret facility, where scientists pored over every inch of it for months. They hoped to unlock its secrets, to understand who or what had built it. But despite their best efforts, the technology inside remained incomprehensible. The ship's systems were dead, its power source depleted. After exhausting all possibilities, the project was shut down, and the craft was locked away in a forgotten warehouse. To the world, it might as well have never existed. Years passed, and humanity moved on. Movies and books kept the idea of aliens alive in popular culture, but most people treated it as entertainment rather than reality. The fear that once gripped society slowly faded into the background, replaced by newer worries: climate change, pandemics, political unrest. No one thought much about the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors anymore. That is, until one fateful evening when the sky above Earth split open like a wound. It started with a low rumble, barely noticeable at first. People glanced up, thinking it was thunder, but there were no clouds in sight. Then came the sound, a deafening roar that rattled windows and sent birds fleeing in panic. Across the globe, millions watched in awe as massive shapes descended from the heavens. These weren't the tiny UFOs of urban legends. These were colossal star destroyers, their hulls glinting menacingly in the fading light. Each ship dwarfed skyscrapers, casting long shadows that stretched for miles. Panic spread like wildfire as people realized these weren't just random visitors. Something about their presence felt deliberate. The largest ship hovered directly over New York City, its sheer size blotting out the sun. Traffic came to a standstill as drivers abandoned their cars to gawk at the spectacle. Tourists froze mid-photo, their phones shaking in their hands. Even seasoned reporters struggled to find words as live broadcasts captured the surreal scene, unfolding before their eyes. The air grew heavy with tension as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Then, the message came. A voice boomed through speakers worldwide, loud enough to shake buildings yet eerily calm. "We are the Vraxen," it declared, devoid of emotion. "Your species has committed an unforgivable act. You will answer for your crimes." The announcement left humanity reeling. Crimes? What could humans possibly have done to anger beings capable of traveling between stars? Speculation ran wild. Was it nuclear testing, space junk littering their territory, or perhaps some ancient offense committed centuries ago, now lost to history? Whatever the reason, the Vraxen didn't offer explanations. They simply demanded justice. As government scrambled to respond, ordinary citizens huddled together, trying to make sense of the situation. Parents comforted crying children while elderly neighbors recalled tales of past invasions, only half-jokingly comparing them to science fiction movies. Social media exploded with memes and theories, a mix of humor and hysteria masking the underlying terror. For the first time in decades, humanity faced a threat unlike anything it had encountered before. Deep within classified archives, a retired astrophysicist named Dr. Elias Munro sat alone in his study, staring at old photographs of the Siberian spacecraft. His heart raced as memories flooded back, the late nights spent analyzing data, the debates with colleagues, the unanswered questions that haunted him for years. He knew something the rest of the world didn't. This wasn't humanity's first encounter with the Vraxen. It was their second, and this time they weren't here to observe. Munro picked up the phone, his hands trembling slightly. There was someone he needed to call, a former colleague who still worked in government intelligence. As he dialed the number, he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers humanity desperately sought were buried in the past. Somewhere in those dusty files and forgotten labs lay the key to understanding why the Vraxen had returned and how to stop them. Little did Munro know, his actions would set off a chain reaction that would change the course of history forever. For now, though, the world held its breath, waiting to see what the Vraxen would do next. One thing was certain: the aliens weren't here to negotiate. They were here for revenge. The silence that followed the Vraxen's announcement was deafening. For hours, humanity waited with bated breath, unsure of what would happen next. The star destroyers remained motionless in the sky, casting ominous shadows over cities and towns below. People huddled indoors, glued to their screens as news outlets scrambled to piece together information about the mysterious invaders. Governments held emergency meetings, but no one could agree on how to respond. Should they retaliate, negotiate, or simply brace for impact? Then, without warning, the largest ship, the one hovering over New York City, began to emit a low hum. It grew louder and deeper, vibrating through buildings and rattling windows. Suddenly, a beam of light shot down from the vessel, illuminating Times Square in an otherworldly glow. Crowds scattered in terror as the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the beam emerged a holographic figure, a towering, insect-like creature with multiple limbs and glowing eyes. Its presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "We are the Vraxen," the figure repeated, its voice cold and mechanical. "Your species has violated sacred territory. You will be judged." Judged? The word sent chills down spines worldwide. Humanity had always imagined first contact as a moment of wonder and discovery, not condemnation. Yet here they were, facing judgment from beings who viewed Earth as little more than trespassers. Questions swirled in people's minds. What sacred territory had humans violated? And why hadn't anyone known about it until now? As chaos erupted across the globe, world leaders convened in secret to discuss their options. Military commanders urged immediate action, arguing that showing weakness would only embolden the invaders. Diplomats, however, cautioned against rash decisions, reminding everyone that the Vraxen possessed technology far beyond human comprehension. Attacking them outright might provoke even greater retaliation. In the end, a compromise was reached. Humanity would attempt communication while preparing for the worst. Meanwhile, Dr. Elias Munro worked tirelessly to uncover answers. After contacting his former colleague, he gained access to classified files related to the Siberian spacecraft, discovered decades earlier. As he sifted through dusty documents and grainy photographs, one detail stood out. The ship hadn't been abandoned accidentally. It had been deliberately left behind, almost as if its creators wanted it found. Munro realized this wasn't just a random artifact. It was a message. But what was it trying to say? He recalled the strange symbols etched into the craft's hull, patterns that shifted and shimmered like living organisms. At the time, scientists dismissed them as decorative or meaningless. Now, Munro wondered if they held the key to understanding the Vraxen's motives. His suspicions deepened when he learned another crucial fact. Shortly after the ship's discovery, researchers detected faint energy readings emanating from its core. Though weak, these signals suggested the craft wasn't completely dead. It was dormant, waiting for something, or someone. Armed with this new information, Monroe approached government officials, urging them to revisit the old case. Initially, met with skepticism, his persistence paid off when satellite imagery revealed a startling truth. The Vraxan fleet's formation mirrored the same intricate patterns seen on the Siberian ship. This wasn't coincidence, it was connection. The invaders weren't just attacking blindly, they were responding to something humanity had unknowingly triggered. While Monroe pieced together the puzzle, Captain Sophia Reyes prepared her team for what lay ahead. A decorated fighter pilot and leader of an elite special operations unit, Reyes had spent years training for scenarios exactly like this. Her squad consisted of experts in every field, combat specialists, engineers, linguists, all handpicked for their ability to adapt under pressure. Though none of them had faced an alien invasion before, they shared a fierce determination to protect Earth at any cost. Their mission was clear: establish communication with the Vraxan and gather intel on their intentions. If diplomacy failed, they would need to assess the invaders' weaknesses and develop countermeasures. It was a daunting task, but Reyes refused to let fear cloud her judgment. She reminded herself, and her team, that humanity's survival depended on staying calm and focused. Under cover of darkness, Reyes led her team to a secure location near the heart of the city, where the Vraxan flagship loomed overhead. Using advanced stealth technology, they managed to avoid detection as they set up equipment designed to intercept and analyze the aliens' transmissions. Hours passed as technicians worked frantically to decode the data streaming from the ship. Finally, a breakthrough. Fragments of language began to emerge, revealing snippets of the Vraxan's message. "They're talking about a breach," one linguist whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "Something about crossing boundaries. They keep repeating the phrase sacred veil." Reyes frowned. "What does that mean?" "It's hard to say," the linguist admitted. "But based on context, it sounds like they believe we've trespassed into some kind of forbidden zone. Maybe outer space itself is sacred to them." The revelation struck a chord with Monroe, who had been monitoring the operation remotely. He remembered reading reports of deep space probes launched by NASA and other space agencies. Could those missions have inadvertently crossed into Vraxan territory? If so, humanity's exploration of the cosmos might have been perceived as an act of aggression. Before they could delve deeper into the mystery, disaster struck. Without warning, the Vraxan flagship unleashed a devastating attack, targeting major cities around the world. Lasers sliced through skyscrapers, reducing landmarks to rubble in seconds. Panic spread as millions fled in terror, unsure where to find safety. The invaders showed no mercy, striking indiscriminately and leaving destruction in their wake. Amid the chaos, Reyes and her team barely escaped with their lives. Their equipment was destroyed, but they managed to salvage critical data before retreating to a safe house. Exhausted yet determined, Reyes contacted Monroe, sharing what they had learned. Together, they formulated a plan. If humanity couldn't negotiate peace, they would need to fight back, and fast. Monroe knew exactly where to start. Decades ago, his research team had uncovered something extraordinary inside the Siberian spacecraft. A self-replicating nanobot swarm capable of dismantling matter at a molecular level. At the time, they deemed it too dangerous to experiment with further and locked it away in a secure facility. Now, with Earth facing annihilation, Monroe argued that retrieving the nanobots was their only hope. "There's no guarantee it'll work," he warned Reyes during a video call. "But if we don't try, we're already dead." Reyes nodded grimly. "Then we don't have a choice, we'll get it done." As plans took shape, humanity braced for the fight of its life. The Vraxan had made their intentions clear. They wouldn't stop until justice was served. But unbeknownst to them, Earth had awakened a sleeping giant. Hidden within the depths of a forgotten lab lay a weapon unlike anything the universe had ever seen. And soon, the invaders would learn just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to the brink. For now, though, the battle raged on. Cities burned, lives were lost, and hope hung by a thread. Yet even in the darkest moments, resilience shone through. Ordinary citizens banded together to aid the wounded and rebuild what had been destroyed. Soldiers stood guard, ready to defend their homes to the bitter end, and somewhere in the shadows, a small group of heroes prepared to risk everything, for Earth, for humanity, and for the future. The stage was set. The pieces were in motion. All that remained was to see whether humanity could rise to meet the challenge or fall victim to its own hubris. The decision to retrieve the nanobot swarm was not made lightly. World leaders debated for hours, weighing the risks and rewards of unleashing such a powerful weapon. Some argued that using the nanobots could escalate the conflict, turning Earth into a battlefield where no one, not even humanity itself, would survive. Others insisted it was the only option left. With cities reduced to rubble and millions displaced, the choice became clear. They had to fight back, no matter the cost. Dr. Elias Munro stood at the center of the storm, his voice calm but firm as he addressed the council. "This isn't just about revenge," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "It's about survival. If we don't act now, there won't be an Earth left to save." His words struck a chord. After much deliberation, the mission was approved. Under strict secrecy. Dubbed Operation Reclamation, it tasked Captain Sophia Reyes and her elite team with infiltrating the heavily guarded facility where the nanobots were stored. Their objective was simple yet perilous: retrieve the swarm and deliver it to scientists who would integrate it into a weapon capable of stopping the Vraxen. Reyes accepted the mission without hesitation. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but failure wasn't an option. As she briefed her team, she emphasized the importance of precision and stealth. One wrong move and everything would fall apart. The facility housing the nanobots was located deep underground in a remote desert region, accessible only through a labyrinth of tunnels and security checkpoints. Built during the Cold War era, it had been designed to withstand nuclear attacks, making it nearly impenetrable. Armed guards patrolled its corridors around the clock, while automated systems monitored every inch of the compound. Breaking in would require more than skill. It would demand ingenuity. Under the cover of darkness, Reyes and her team approached the facility in a modified stealth aircraft. The vehicle hovered silently above the dunes before deploying the operatives, via parachutes equipped with noise-canceling technology. Once on the ground, they moved swiftly, avoiding detection as they made their way to the entrance. Their first challenge came in the form of biometric scanners guarding the main door. Fortunately, the team's hacker, Alex Chen, had prepared for this. Using a portable device rigged to mimic human DNA, he bypassed the system within minutes. The group slipped inside undetected, their footsteps muffled by sound-absorbing suits. Inside, the facility felt like a tomb. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Empty halls stretched endlessly, interrupted only by locked doors and surveillance cameras. Reyes led the way, her sharp instincts guiding them past traps and alarms. Every step brought them closer to their goal and closer to disaster. Halfway through the mission, disaster struck. A malfunctioning drone patrolling the lower levels detected their presence and sounded the alarm. Red lights flashed, and loudspeakers blared warnings throughout the facility. Doors slammed shut automatically, sealing off escape routes. Reyes cursed under her breath but quickly regained composure. "Stick to the plan," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. The team split up, each member taking responsibility for disabling key systems to buy time. While two operatives hacked into the facility's power grid, Reyes and Chen raced toward the containment chamber where the nanobots were stored. Along the way, they encountered armed guards, forcing them to engage in brief but intense firefights. Reyes's combat training shone through as she expertly navigated the skirmishes, ensuring her team stayed intact. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the chamber. Heavy blast doors barred their entry, requiring another round of hacking to unlock. As Chen worked furiously on the keypad, Reyes kept watch, her rifle trained on the corridor behind them. Her heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. When the doors slid open with a hiss, the sight inside took their breath away. Suspended in a stasis field at the center of the room floated the nanobot swarm. Tiny, metallic particles shimmered faintly, swirling in a mesmerizing dance. Despite its small size, the swarm radiated an aura of immense power, almost alive in its intensity. Reyes couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and dread as she stared at it. "Is this really going to work?" Chen asked, voicing the question everyone had been thinking. "It has to," Reyes replied, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Let's get it loaded." Carefully, they transferred the swarm into a secure container designed to maintain its dormant state. The process was delicate. One misstep could activate the bots prematurely, spelling doom for the entire operation. Sweat dripped down Chen's forehead as he handled the controls, his hands steady despite the pressure. When the transfer was complete, Reyes let out a sigh of relief, but they weren't safe yet. As they retraced their steps toward the exit, the facility seemed intent on stopping them. Automated defenses kicked in, sending waves of robotic sentries to block their path. Explosions rocked the tunnels, forcing the team to take alternate routes. At one point, Reyes narrowly avoided being crushed by falling debris as a section of the ceiling collapsed. Through sheer determination and teamwork, they pushed forward, refusing to give up. Just when it seemed they might actually make it out alive, a final obstacle emerged. A massive reinforced door separating them from freedom. With time running out and enemy reinforcements closing in, Reyes made a bold decision. "We blow it," she declared, pulling out a high-powered explosive charge, "but that'll trigger the self-destruct sequence." Chen protested, his voice rising in panic. "We don't have a choice," Reyes shot back. "If we don't get out now, none of this matters anyway." With seconds to spare, they planted the charge and retreated to a safe distance. The explosion shook the ground, blasting the door off its hinges and creating a narrow pathway to the surface. Reyes and her team sprinted through the opening, emerging into the cool night air just as the facility began to collapse behind them. Exhausted but triumphant, they boarded the waiting stealth aircraft and soared into the sky. Below, flames consumed the remnants of the lab, erasing all evidence of the nanobot swarm's existence. For the first time in days, Reyes allowed herself a moment of hope. They had succeeded against impossible odds, retrieving the weapon that could turn the tide of the war. But as the plane ascended higher, Reyes glanced out the window at the distant glow of the Vraxan fleet still hovering above Earth. Her expression hardened. This victory was only the beginning. The real battle lay ahead, and humanity's fate rested squarely on their shoulders. For now, though, they had bought themselves a fighting chance. The nanobot swarm was in their possession, and with it came the potential to strike back at the invaders. It was a gamble, yes, but sometimes gambles were necessary to win wars. And if there was one thing humanity excelled at, it was rising to the occasion when it mattered most. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Reyes whispered a silent prayer. Whatever happened next, she vowed to stand her ground. Earth wasn't just her home, it was worth fighting for. With the nanobot swarm safely retrieved, humanity's focus shifted to integrating it into a weapon capable of taking on the Vraxan fleet. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock in a top-secret facility buried deep beneath a mountain range. The air buzzed with urgency as teams collaborated to design delivery systems that could deploy the swarm effectively. Every second counted. The Vraxan continued their relentless assault, obliterating cities and infrastructure without mercy. Dr. Elias Monroe supervised the operation, his mind racing with possibilities and fears. He knew the nanobots were humanity's best, and perhaps only chance at survival. But he couldn't shake the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. If something went wrong, the consequences would be catastrophic. This isn't just science anymore, he muttered to himself late one night, staring at schematics spread across his desk. It's life or death. Captain Sophia Reyes, too, felt the pressure mounting. Though her team had successfully retrieved the swarm, she understood that retrieving it was only half the battle. Deploying it against an enemy as advanced as the Vraxen required precision, strategy, and nerves of steel. As plans took shape, Reyes trained relentlessly with her squad, preparing for the mission that would decide Earth's fate. The plan was ambitious but straightforward. A small squadron of stealth fighters would carry payloads equipped with the nanobot swarm directly into the heart of the Vraxen armada. Their target was the flagship, the largest and most heavily guarded ship in the fleet. Intelligence suggested it served as the command center coordinating the invasion. Destroying it could cripple the invaders' ability to wage war. To maximize their chances of success, the operation relied on three critical factors: speed, stealth, and surprise. Pilots practiced evasive maneuvers day and night, learning how to outmaneuver the Vraxen's superior technology. Engineers modified the fighters, with experimental cloaking devices designed to render them invisible to enemy sensors, and technicians fine-tuned the payload containers to ensure the nanobots remained dormant until deployment. Despite these preparations, doubts lingered. Could humanity truly stand toe-to-toe with beings so far ahead in technological advancement? Were they merely delaying the inevitable? These questions haunted everyone involved, but no one voiced them aloud. Instead, they poured their energy into making the mission work, knowing failure was not an option. The day of the operation arrived under a sky heavy with tension. Thunderclouds rolled overhead as if mirroring humanity's collective anxiety. Inside the hangar, Reyes addressed her team one final time before takeoff. Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed the storm raging within her. "We've trained for this moment," she said, pacing slowly in front of the assembled pilots. "We know what's at stake. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone who calls Earth home. No matter what happens out there, remember why we're doing this." Her words resonated deeply with the group. Each pilot nodded solemnly, their faces etched with determination. They climbed into their cockpits, strapped in, and waited for the signal to launch. Outside, the wind howled as technicians performed last-minute checks on the aircraft. When everything was ready, the engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath them. As the squadron lifted off, Reyes glanced back at the fading lights of the base. She thought of all the lives depending on her team's success, not just soldiers and scientists, but ordinary people clinging to hope amidst the chaos, families huddled together in shelters, children crying for parents they might never see again, strangers helping strangers in acts of quiet heroism. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was resilient. And tonight, resilience would meet its ultimate test. The journey to the Vraxen fleet was fraught with danger. Even with cloaking technology, navigating through enemy territory required pinpoint accuracy. The fighters flew in tight formation, weaving between massive star destroyers that loomed like mountains in space. Plasma cannons fired randomly, lighting up the darkness with bursts of deadly energy. Reyes's hands gripped the controls tightly. As she guided her team through the barrage, her instincts sharpened by years of experience. Finally, they reached their destination, the flagship. Its towering silhouette dominated the void, its surface gleaming ominously even in the absence of sunlight. Defensive turrets scanned the area constantly, ready to obliterate anything that ventured too close. Reyes's heart raced as she gave the order to split up. Two fighters peeled away to create distractions, drawing fire while the others closed in on the target. "Stay sharp," Reyes reminded her team over comms. "We get one shot at this." The first wave of plasma bolts tore through the emptiness, where the squadron had been moments earlier. The decoy fighters executed daring loops and spins, narrowly avoiding destruction as they lured the turrets away from the main group. Meanwhile, Reyes led her remaining pilots toward the flagship's hull, searching for an entry point large enough to accommodate the payload. When they found it, a gaping maintenance hatch near the rear of the ship, they didn't hesitate. Reyes signaled for the drop, and her wingman released the container holding the nanobot swarm. It plummeted silently toward the flagship, attaching itself magnetically to the hull with a soft clink. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the swarm activated. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The flagship's sleek exterior began to dissolve, eaten away by billions of microscopic machines working in perfect unison. Alarms blared across the Vraxen fleet as their prized vessel crumbled into dust. Chaos erupted as the invaders attempted to regroup, but the swarm spread uncontrollably, consuming everything in its path. Star destroyers tried to retreat, but the nanobots followed, dismantling their engines and weapon systems with ruthless efficiency. Reyes watched in awe and terror as the tide of battle shifted dramatically. The once unstoppable Vraxen fleet faltered, their ships fleeing Earth's atmosphere in disarray. It was a victory, but at what cost? Back on Earth, news of the successful strike spread quickly. People gathered in streets and squares, cheering as images of the retreating Vraxen fleet flashed across screens. Fireworks lit up the night sky in celebration, though the scars of war remained fresh. Cities lay in ruins, millions were displaced, and countless lives had been lost. Yet amid the devastation, a newfound sense of unity emerged. Nations that had once squabbled over borders and resources now collaborated openly, sharing knowledge and resources to rebuild and prepare for whatever came next. For Reyes and her team, the aftermath was bittersweet. They returned to Earth as heroes hailed for their bravery and sacrifice, but the cost weighed heavily on them. Friends and comrades hadn't made it back. Memories of those lost haunted Reyes every time she closed her eyes. Still, she found solace in knowing their efforts hadn't been in vain. Humanity had proven itself resilient, resourceful, and determined to protect its home. Dr. Monroe, too, grappled with mixed emotions. While relieved that the nanobots had saved Earth, he couldn't ignore the potential dangers they posed. "We've opened Pandora's box," he warned during a televised address. "If we're not careful, we'll become the monsters we feared." His words resonated with many, sparking debates about the ethical implications of wielding such power. As life slowly returned to normal, or at least as close to normal as possible, questions lingered. Why had the Vraxen attacked? What had humanity unknowingly done to provoke them? And most importantly, would they return? For now, Earth stood victorious. But the stars remained silent, watching and waiting. And somewhere, deep in the void of space, the remnants of the Vraxen fleet plotted their next move. The days following the Vraxen retreat were a blur of rebuilding, mourning, and celebration. Cities that had been reduced to rubble began to rise again, brick by brick. People worked tirelessly to clear debris, repair roads, and restore power grids. Volunteers from all corners of the globe came together, offering their skills and labor to help those in need. In parks and squares, memorials sprang up, simple plaques bearing the names of those who had lost their lives during the invasion. Humanity had survived, but the scars ran deep. Yet amid the sorrow, there was hope. For the first time in history, the world felt united. Borders seemed less important. Nationalities mattered less. What mattered most was the shared understanding that Earth belonged to everyone, and it was worth protecting. Governments that had once competed for resources now collaborated openly, pooling knowledge and technology to ensure humanity would never be caught off guard again. The United Nations established a new division dedicated to planetary defense, tasked with monitoring space for potential threats and developing advanced weaponry. It was a bold step towards safeguarding the future, though many wondered if it would truly be enough. Captain Sophia Reyes found herself at the center of this newfound unity. Her role in leading the mission against the Vraxen made her an international hero, her face plastered across newspapers and television screens worldwide. Strangers approached her on the street, thanking her for saving Earth. Children asked for autographs, their eyes wide with admiration. But behind closed doors, Reyes struggled to reconcile the public image with the person she saw in the mirror each morning. Haunted by memories of fallen comrades, she often lay awake at night, replaying the mission in her mind. She remembered the deafening roar of plasma cannons, the acrid smell of burning metal, and the weight of knowing every decision could mean life or death. Most vividly, she recalled the moment the nanobot swarm activated, watching as the Vraxen flagship dissolved into nothingness. It had been awe-inspiring but also terrifying. Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something far beyond human control. Dr. Elias Monroe shared her unease. Though hailed as a genius for his role in retrieving and deploying the nanobots, he carried the burden of guilt, like a stone around his neck. He had spent decades studying alien technology, always believing it held answers to humanity's greatest challenges. Now he realized it also posed dangers he hadn't fully anticipated. During interviews, he repeatedly warned about the risks of using such powerful tools without fully understanding them. "We've taken a step forward," he said during one press conference. "But we must tread carefully. Power without wisdom is a recipe for disaster." Despite these warnings, not everyone heeded his advice. Some military leaders argued that the nanobots should be mass-produced and integrated into Earth's defenses. Others pushed for further research into alien tech, hoping to unlock even more secrets. Debates raged in government chambers and academic circles, dividing opinion between those who believed humanity needed to prepare for another attack and those who feared becoming too reliant on dangerous technologies. While the adults debated, children dreamed. Across the planet, classrooms buzzed with excitement as teachers incorporated the events of the invasion into lessons about science, history, and ethics. Students built models of star destroyers and wrote essays imagining what life might be like on other planets. For many young minds, the Vraxen invasion wasn't just a tragedy. It was proof that humanity was capable of greatness when faced with impossible odds. Inspired by stories of bravery and ingenuity, a new generation vowed to explore the stars themselves, determined to learn from both the mistakes and triumphs of their predecessors. But as weeks turned into months, questions lingered about the Vraxen themselves. Why had they attacked? What did they mean by Sacred Veil? And why had they retreated so suddenly after losing their flagship? Scientists pored over data collected during the battle, analyzing fragments of communication and studying images captured by satellites. Linguists worked tirelessly to decode the Vraxen language, piecing together phrases and symbols that hinted at a complex culture rooted in strict rules and hierarchies. One theory emerged as particularly compelling. The Vraxen viewed outer space not as empty voids waiting to be explored, but as sacred territory governed by ancient laws. According to this interpretation, humanity's ventures into deep space, probes, satellites, and manned missions had violated these laws, provoking the Vraxen's wrath. If true, it raised unsettling questions about humanity's place in the universe. Were humans merely ignorant trespassers, unaware of boundaries they couldn't see? Or were the Vraxen arrogant overlords, imposing their will on others? These uncertainties cast a shadow over celebrations of victory. While some optimistically believed the invaders wouldn't return, others remained convinced the Vraxen were regrouping, planning their next move. Intelligence agencies monitored space closely, scanning for any sign of activity near Earth. Meanwhile, engineers worked feverishly to construct orbital defense platforms equipped with cutting-edge weapons systems. The goal was clear. If the Vraxen ever came back, humanity would be ready. Amidst the preparations, moments of reflection offered glimpses of humanity's resilience. Artists created murals depicting scenes from the battle, blending realism with surrealism to capture the raw emotion of those days. Writers penned novels exploring themes of survival, sacrifice, and redemption. Musicians composed symphonies that echoed the chaos and courage of the conflict. These works served as reminders, not just of what had been lost, but of what had been gained. A renewed sense of purpose and connection. For Dr. Monroe, these artistic expressions provided solace. He often visited galleries and museums, marveling at how people processed trauma through creativity. One evening, standing before a painting of the nanobot swarm consuming the Vraxen flagship, he struck up a conversation with a young artist. "Do you think we'll ever understand them?" the artist asked, referring to the aliens. Monroe hesitated before answering. Maybe, he said finally. But understanding isn't always enough. Sometimes it's about learning to coexist despite our differences. The comment stayed with him long after the gallery closed. Coexistence, a simple idea yet profoundly difficult to achieve. As humanity rebuilt its cities and strengthened its defenses, Monroe hoped they would also find ways to reach out, to bridge the gap between species rather than widen it. Perhaps, he thought, the key to peace lay not in weapons but in dialogue. Meanwhile, Captain Reyes returned to active duty, training new recruits and sharing her experiences with anyone willing to listen. Though still haunted by loss, she found comfort in mentoring the next generation of pilots. Watching them grow stronger and more confident reminded her of why she had fought so hard, to give others a chance to live, to dream, to build a better future. And somewhere, deep in the vast expanse of space, the remnants of the Vraxan fleet drifted silently. Their ships bore scars from the battle, evidence of humanity's defiance etched into their metallic hulls. For now, they remained distant observers, their intentions unclear. But in the hearts of those who called Earth home, one truth resonated above all else. Humanity had faced its greatest fear and emerged victorious. The stars no longer seemed unreachable. They were a challenge, a promise, a frontier waiting to be explored. As the sun set over a healing planet, casting golden light across fields and oceans, hope burned brighter than ever before. Whatever lay ahead, humanity stood ready, not just to survive, but to thrive. For the first time in history, Earth looked outward with confidence, prepared to meet the unknown head-on. The journey would be fraught with challenges, yes, but it was also filled with possibilities. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.